My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome back to Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, filling in for Dave DeBow. And if you ever wondered, you've been in the business, you've been in your career, and you're looking down towards the end of the thing and you're saying, I can't quite retire on that, but it doesn't really become obvious until you get later and start thinking about it. You get in a job, you're working, but then you're thinking, how am I going to retire on 40% of what I can't live on already? So today, on the show, I've got Bud Evans, former police, former military, and just killing it in the multifamily space. So I'm excited for the conversation. Bud, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Bryce. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack there, but let's go to the inflection point of real estate. When did real estate become an option, or rather a solution?
Yeah, great question. I have kind of an odd story. So while I was in the military, I moved from one place to another, kind of as we do. Mm-hmm. And I wound up in a small town in South Jersey called Cinnaminson. Okay. Native American word means sweet water, but yeah. I wind up coming in, the whole thing with the military is come into a place and make it better when you leave than it was when you got there. So I ran for local office and got elected and became the mayor of Cinnaminson, New Jersey. And then the military, who had told me that, yeah, sure, you're good to go. Good luck. When I ran initially, came back about a year and a half into my tour and said, yeah, you can't do that. We screwed up. You need to resign. I said, when? They said, now. So it was a Friday at 10 o'clock. And I sent an email to the township clerk and said, I got to resign. I wound up with about 40 to 50 hours of my life back. And I always per week, and I always thought real estate's kind of cool. But what really kind of turned me on was I was sitting in, we worked as an intelligence officer. I worked in this dark room, no windows, and sitting there watching the TV, which wasn't supposed to be on unless it was on a news channel. And then this infomercial comes on and I'm watching this guy on the screen and says, hey, if you want to learn how to deal in real estate and do flips and wholesales, and text this number and, whatever. And so I did. And I sat there for 2 hours on a Wednesday, brought my son, tapped him on the shoulder, said, whatever happens, don't let me buy anything. Yeah. By the end of the 2 hours, he goes, you're buying this, right?
Yeah, they got him first.
Thanks a lot, dude. Right. So then I did a 3-day course, and then I went into another 2-day course. And then by the end of the 2-day course, I was being sent somewhere for training. And then January of 2019, I had closed on my first flip, 2 rental properties behind it. Next thing I know, 2 years later, I got 10 wholesales, 21 doors, and 30 rental properties all done. Now we're at 5 years. I'm finishing up flip number 105. I've got 50 personally owned, actually 52 now. We just bought a duplex in Ohio, and we're about to go under contract. I just got a text message right now. Actually, we're going to contract for another one in Ohio as well. So that's how I got in, and I've been kind of, doing that for the last 5 years.
It just kind of grew on you, it seems.
I love it. I love it.
Well, the thing, and this is probably the same for you. I love in a lot of places, there's a glass ceiling, and you might not even feel it until your neck's pressed up against it. You're like this. And it's like, well, I've gone as far as I can go in this career path without, I don't know, someone resigning or someone being promoted. You get to the glass ceiling, and with real estate, it never really feels like a glass ceiling. It feels like probably the opposite, like a glass floor. You mess up and it's like, and you're out. But there's no limit to the amount of things you can do, which is really exciting for a guy like me who's got a ton of ideas, and ideas and capital make things happen. So at what point did you start using other people's money to do this, or have you been self-financed and kind of bootstrapped?
No, man. The first deal that I did it with a 12-month 0% balance transfer check and $20,000 from a Navy friend of mine. So
Yeah. So your first other
from
people's
deal
money.
one, man. Yeah,
So do you attribute that to your training?
I
Uh,
do. Yeah. I had no idea what it was like before that.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that they can use OPM, other people's money, till they run out of their own and they start looking for other ways to do it. So I really like people who come out of training because it's it kind of like they emphasize it. They're like, look, if you want to make a business out of this, you're gonna have to act like a business, and businesses take loans to grow their businesses. So if you're not, like I don't know many businesses that use their own profits to grow their business. And if they do, it's kind of like a linear thing. There's no exponential
Right.
growth when you're reinvesting um, over and over and over and over again. You're like, when I cash out of this flip, I'm gonna get my next one. It's like, and I just passed on 4 deals because I'm waiting to get out of
Right.
my next flip.
It's like
So
Robert Kiyosaki said it, man. He said, I'm not rich because I use my own money. I'm rich because I use debt.
yeah. So um, how much capital would you say you've raised to date, if you had to guess?
Ooh, let's see. Well, we're at about 10 million overall. So about, well, more than 20% of that, because I've also done capital raising for multifamilies. So probably about somewhere around the 10 million mark.
Capital raising for syndicating funds into other people's deals.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So do you find that that's a little bit like chasing a tail sometimes? Like you can put all the effort in to raise money and or you can get the opportunity. Someone says, "Hey, bud, I want you to raise money for my multifamily deal." And then
Yeah.
you go out and like beat the bushes and bring some people to the table, and maybe the deal doesn't even pan out, or maybe the people's letter of intent was, they just ghost you. Like, do you find that you're wasting a lot of time in the syndication space, or do you find it a profitable endeavor for people to pursue?
Yeah. Capital raising, I don't really look for so let me start by saying this. I part of my philosophy is finding funding first
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then jumping into the deals.
Mm-hmm.
And then dealing with people that you have an ongoing relationship with. And I'm not saying that because, accredited or non-accredited investor. What I'm saying is that when I'm raising capital, the people that I'm talking to are just waiting for the call. They're waiting for that. Hey, dude, I got good news. Remember how we were talking about the way that I could get you into a real estate deal? And then on
Mm-hmm.
the other side, you've got the guys that are real estate investors, and they're like, hey, bud, would you be willing to jump onto a webinar? We're trying to raise some capital for this project. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll go through that entire project, that entire webinar and poke holes in it. And if I can poke holes in it, then I don't want to be a part of it. If they don't know the answers, I should say, if they don't know the answers to the holes that I'm trying to poke, then I can't be a part of it. So for the most part, I'm doing due diligence on both sides of the deal. And not only am I working with people that I have established a relationship with that are willing to throw money at me, but I've also got people on the other side that I've established a relationship with. And the network is the net worth. I mean, that's just the way it is. Dealing with, we've got several hundred people that are constantly putting deals in our Slack channel, looking for funding. And, I'm probably close to 90% of them. I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah. It's like kind of like when you're looking for a flip and the wholesalers are emailing you the third chain of a deal. Like you've seen the original wholesaler, and then you see the same deal come up with an extra five on it. And then you see the same deal come up again with an extra five on it. You're like,
Yeah.
who's the first guy? Well, probably the cheapest price point one is the first guy. So when you look at um, your strategy, I guess the question that came up, I've been thinking a little bit about your career and the background. And a question that I always like to come to is the unfair advantage. What comes easy to you that other people find difficult to do?
Oh man, with me, I run a program and it's checklist oriented. One of the great things about the military is planning, establishing checklists, standard operating procedures, processes. Uh, that just comes naturally to me. I'm sitting here today doing some automations. I know there's a whole who not how thing, and I'm kind of violating that. Sorry, Dan, but I'm sitting here doing it. Couple of reasons. Number one, I enjoy it. Number two, it's going to turn around and make me money in the long run. In this case, I can bring someone in, plug them in front of. So the way that I work things is we find funding, then we start working on networking with people who will bring us deals. Then we start developing the investor's toolbox, which is just a bunch of processes that we use that work. Maybe they work for you. Maybe I have to change a couple things to work for me, and I help people process that out. And then the last thing we do is we help people optimize and scale. And I do that through the EOS model. So very simply, it's all checklist oriented. It's all agenda based. We take extreme ownership of the companies that we run, of 8 of them, and pretty much I had my level 10 meeting at noon today, and it was 30 minutes, because it's so streamlined now that it's okay. What's this company doing? Okay. Finance. What do you got? Marketing. What do you got? Ops. What do you got? Okay, great. Moving on. Next company. What do we got? And it works, so I would definitely say that, creating order out of the chaos is the thing that I'm best at.
And it seems like the people that I interview from military backgrounds have a very good selection and aim. One of my he's still in the military, he's MP. He's always talking about on the mission, there's selection and aim, and every step is on the same aim, and you're constantly trying to actually, he said, no matter what happens, you're always trying to refocus onto the mission at hand instead of being like shiny object. And now all of a sudden you're doing self-storage units, and then all of a sudden you're buying a hotel, and this bowling alley is interesting. Like, that's not the aim, the selection, and then keeping focused no matter what happens on the task at hand, and checking those boxes. So what does the future look like for your business?
Look, we stick with our niche. And this is what I tell people, and I stick with it because it's what I'm good at. I will burr a property from 1 door up to 30 doors, period. I don't like to go much more than that unless somebody's bringing me the deal and asking me to be a part of the GP as a capital raiser, or, what a boots on the ground if it's local. And I own a property management company, so that doesn't hurt. I'm just sticking with my niche. So just that burr strategy. I pick a flip every once in a while. So I look at it this way. Every burr is a flip, but not every flip can be a rental property. So, you're doing flip after flip after flip. When you're doing rentals, it's just less money versus bringing a flip to market. And the stress on a flip is just so high.
Yeah. The burn rate, usually the cost of capital.
Exactly.
The risk involved, you're almost like, you're like, when I get to the other side of this canyon, there's going to be a small hole for me to throw this ball into. Like the game of like, I don't know certainly if that thing exists at the beginning of the flip, but I'm projecting that ARV something. So I would always say to students too, I'd say, look, acquisitions and fixing things is a technique. And then the exit strategy of your acquisition is like, okay, are you either flipping to yourself or are you flipping to the bank? And if you're flipping this burr out to the bank, they have different metrics. They don't care about the countertops, but they certainly care about the roof and the furnace and the hot water tank.
Yep.
So what you do on a burr and what you do on a flip, both of them are that kind of lift, add, and you bring it to the table. So what would you say is your biggest differentiation factor? Like when you approach a flip versus approaching one of your burrs, as to what you do, like your process to hit those numbers?
Upgraded stuff, man. So in our flips, we're looking at that value add, that higher level renovation. When we're doing a rental property, we generally concentrate in B-, C+ areas. So instead of putting tile in a shower, we're doing a fiberglass surround with shelves. We're using fiberglass bathtubs. We're capping off the outdoor faucets, right, to save on water expenses. Instead of using, hollow core doors, we're using solid doors for durability. We'll use level one
rental doors. Yeah,
right. Exactly. We'll use level 1 granite in our rentals, but not in our flips. In our flips, we're going level 3 or quartz, because we're flipping in B and A areas. So A lot of shortcuts, or I don't want to say shortcuts, that's not the appropriate word. A lot of cost saving measures, I'll say, are taken in rental properties versus flips. When we're looking at margins, and this is where I find most of my ability to compete is in these rental areas, because when someone's going, oh, I need, and this kills me, 70% ARV less rehab, and I go, I'll give you 80% all in, and people go, what? Yeah. Okay. You give me 80% of the ARV, and I know that the rehab estimate's going to cost me X. I can outbid everybody else who's using that percentage rule, every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I wouldn't even like, I would always say to people when they're getting started, it's more of a guideline. It's
yeah,
the easiest way to grab your phone and you grab your calculator and bang it out while you're standing in front of the house. But if you're serious about the business of investing, it means taking that thing back to the house and really squeezing it and saying, you know, am I okay sitting the half of the reno on the BRRRR table and getting it back in 5 years? Am I okay sitting, you know, 15 grand of a 30K reno and getting the thing versus trying to, you know, bid with the other people, and maybe you're bidding against a guy who does his own work and he's outbidding you and you
yeah.
lose the deal. Okay, fine. Another deal will come along, but you know, it's not such a hard and fast rule. It's kind of like a quick, is it worth investigating further? For me anyways, I look at it, go 0.7 minus reno. Okay, but what about 0.77? Am I okay with that? And
Yeah.
understanding where the 80.8 comes in and 0.9 and closing costs and what percentages, like breaking down that stack and getting creative with it. On flipping, not a super great idea, but on the BRRRR side of things, you can take a little bit of liberty.
Oh yeah.
Because you're essentially just deferring that income into the future. Like, oh, we had to park 10 grand. How's the rental? Great. How's the area? Better than if we had to buy at 0.7 minus whatever.
Right.
So um, when you're looking at the BRRRRs and things like that, are you taking open variable? Are you dating the rate right now? Or are we locking in at some of these like 5 and 6%? Yeah, I didn't
No,
think so.
I'll take whatever the numbers work at.
Yeah.
You know, too many people get shy. I can't tell you how many people are telling me, you know, hey, well, I'll jump into the market when the interest rates come down. Well, what if they don't?
You and everybody else, man. You and
Right.
everybody else. Uh, but are you locking in like a 15 or a 30 on your BRRRR at 6%?
Yeah, I'll lock it in at whatever they're offering. So I do primarily DSCR loans. So we're at 6.5 to 7 right now. I don't care.
As long as it pens out,
As long as it
right?
pencils out. Yeah.
Is that why you're in Ohio? Like, I
Yeah.
know
Yeah. So I can buy a
is that
fifty
why
thousand
you're in
dollar
Ohio?
house and
Because
put
like,
25 into it. Yeah.
yeah, let's buy a duplex for 45 grand and put, you know, I remember when I was down there in Cleveland, we were buying things for like 16,000 and the
Yeah.
renovation budget was like 9K, paint everything. And the rent was still like 950 a month or 12,
Yeah.
1100 a month. And the neighbor comes over with his burnt out house and he's like, do you want to buy this thing? And I walk around and he's like, 5 grand. I'm like, too much. And I walk out like, where else can you go that someone offers you a house for 5 grand and you tell them that's too much work, man?
Detroit.
Yeah, that's the
it.
other one. You know, I heard these guys, they're doing something interesting. They're doing the development side with these states that have land banks. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've heard of land banking,
Yeah.
but they're doing like, I think they're doing like 10 builds at a time. They're trying to
Yeah.
buy up like old parks and things like that and do like little subdivisions.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting place. So when you look at the Ohio market, for people who are thinking about, you know, a lot of Canadians are looking at it because of its proximity.
Yeah.
But at the same time, are you buying in there for cash flow and just saying appreciation is not something I'm considering?
No, it's a pretty good blend. I mean, we're only getting like maybe 1 to 2% on appreciation, which is fine. But
Yeah.
we're getting
Crazy
13,
cash.
15 cap,
I remember it was, well, in 2019 when I was down there, you know, with the company that I was working with at the time, we were penciling out private deals at 54% cap rate. We were
Yeah.
capitalizing these things back, paid in full with the rents in under 24 months. And
Yeah.
what do you
Well,
do with imagine you had 10 with no mortgages.
yeah,
And
that's
then I'd
kind of
be
where we are now.
43, right?
Yeah.
So stacking that up, the other thing too is you can get a loan for the whole thing in Ohio. I call this guy and he's like, yeah, I'll give you a 2-year loan for 45K, and that's the buy and the fix. And so, yeah, you just got to pay me back in 2 years. And he's like, I'm like, okay, well, what's the thing? Oh, $514 a month. All right. So that's like my new mortgage, right? I'm getting a private mortgage. And then I look at the cash flow on the calculator. It's like 1,100. So I'm like, okay, so I can pay this thing off in 2 years and fix it and own it outright and cash flow the whole way through. Okay, you guys can have your Florida, you can have your Dallas, but you got to be ready. Like you have your property management out there too.
Yeah, we're set up with that. Yeah,
like your own company in your own properties, making sure it's happening.
No, so my company is operating in South Jersey. So we have 3 counties in South Jersey that we primarily focus on. I personally look at Section 8 properties in this area. I do have a couple of higher C areas, which is great. I don't mind having standard market rent when it's like $300 a month better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, out there, I just want to set it and forget it. So Ohio. We surround Pittsburgh, and then we're out in Western PA and Eastern Ohio, with the exception we're doing some suburbs around Cleveland.
Yeah. Which are really nice. Some people, they don't rate those suburbs like Mayfield and Garfield Heights. Like they're not rating it. Like those houses, you're buying them for like 40, maybe 60. And they're like a really great 1942 steel beam, like not going anywhere, nice bungalow, brick maybe even. And the rent's great. So when you talk about your property management out there, how do you vet that property management? Because that was one of the most challenging parts, is the turnovers, the rental clientele of the environment. So how did you determine which property management company to go with when it wasn't yours out there?
Yeah. So I have a series of questions that I usually ask. The first one, crazy enough, is how many rental properties do you personally own?
Like the owner of the company.
Yeah. And I won't do business with someone who doesn't have skin in the game.
They're like, I don't own any. I'm just a manager. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. And so what else can you give the people that are thinking about it? Because that's the biggest challenge, is getting a property manager that you can trust in a heavy property management investment area like Cleveland or Cincinnati, or these other, like, because people aren't any different anywhere else, but I think that the economic climate has people acting a little different. That's all as much as I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm actually pulling it up right now because I have an entire list, and we just go through this, and I actually send this out to people, and I don't mind sharing that link with you. I'm just trying to jump into it here. It's just there's emails, templates. There's a PDF that we have here that.
So yeah, I mean, we were part and parcel the property management company, and I can remember we had taken over another property management company's portfolio as they kind of failed out of the business. And at the time, we were doing a property audit, and we had something like 75 houses vacant, sucking the cash flow out of the whole business. And so we'd go to these things, and I'd be like, no wonder you can't rent it. It's a disaster in here. Like it's not ready. And it was that over and over and over again. And it just, like, that's the number one thing. If you want to be competitive in Cleveland, just paint the thing. You maintenance the kitchen and the bathroom, and someone will move out of the unmaintenanced, unpainted house down the street in a second.
Yeah. We're actually doing, we have the property that we just bought in Elyria is between 3 hospitals. So we're going to use some medium-term rental on that one. And then, as far as those questions, there's, it's, how long have they been in the business? Do they do anything else, or are they 100% management company? how much office space do they currently have? How many employees? How do they pay their property managers? How do they collect rent? What preventative maintenance, and this is a big one for me. What preventative maintenance do they do, and what repairs policy do they have? Um, you know, I I have my property management company out in Pittsburgh, and I mirror them here in South Jersey, and we charge 8%, and we have like an a la carte. Like we can go out there, we do quarterly bug spray, we do, periodic inspections. We have air filters mailed to the house, once every 6 months. And it's very simple to tell when you're sending them 2 air filters every 6 months, and you go out there on your quarterly inspection and there are 2 air filters in the basement, in
the box still.
Exactly. So we look for renewal rate percentage, because there are some that'll take a whole month's rent. There are some that'll charge you $500 for a lease, and $100 for a lease up, for a subsequent lease up for the same tenant. I look for messages or for references, and then, what kind of guarantees do they have? The one thing that I really kind of gravitate towards is a very low long-term vacancy rate. So got to throw a plug out to NULF Management in Pittsburgh. They have a 0.03% vacancy rate over the last 5 years.
Yeah, you got to get aggressive with filling those up. And that's the thing that's really challenging with property management is it's not really skin off their, off their back if it's empty. And that's always the contention is that, yes, it's in their best interest to fill it. Yes, it's in their best interest to keep them there, but it doesn't really cost them too much comparative to the owner when it's empty or when it gets beat up. Yeah. I've had property management companies they're very quick to charge you for the maintenance request that you wanted, but they'll let the uncollected rent slide. Yeah. When it's time for them to get paid, they want to get paid now. But when it's time for them to collect that rent and pay you, oh, they're a couple months behind, and they said they would do it next week, and they're playing these games, and then suddenly they move out and there's a water bill and there's a bunch of stuff. But you better believe that guy who went out to fix the toilet, he wants to get paid right now. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, I went through 2 property management companies out in Pittsburgh before I found this one. And then I went through one in South Jersey before I started my own. And for exactly those reasons. One thing that I found was that this property management system in and of itself right now is broken. The property managers are inversely related to your success as a landlord. You get paid when everything goes right. They get paid when everything goes wrong or they make a mistake. So that's why I do the 8%, and then we don't get paid if you don't get paid. And we go through the process. So it's a completely different model that I'm using. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We look for that win-win versus the standard, which is currently win-lose. They win if you lose.
Yeah. And that's always been the struggle with property management is like you're saying, that inverse relationship to successful operation is just when you're losing, they're winning. And when you're winning, they're kind of winning too, because they're collecting their thing too. So it's like there's no real motivation to keep them honest. So when you look at the business and everything you're doing, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's just getting started in this business?
Make offers. That's it, right? Sure. You do the work, you make the offer.
Yeah, put it on paper, man.
Yeah.
Put it on paper.
Yeah, I don't care what the number is. I get teased every once in a while because I do this Zen thing where I go like, deals are neither good nor bad. They just are. You have to find the number. And it's just one of those things where if you're going out and you're doing your deal analysis and you're doing your walkthrough and you're checking the taxes and you're pulling the tax cards and the records and seeing if there are liens against the property, you're doing all this work. What is your time worth? Make the offer. Just make the
offer first and sort it out later. Sort it out in your due diligence, because my mentor used to have this analogy. There's discount meat at the grocery store at 9 o'clock every Saturday morning. and you
Yeah.
can either take your cart and stand around and pick through the meat, or you can put all the meat in your cart and go to the linen section and dump what you don't want and just keep the best meat and put the rest back to the market. And it's kind of the same with offers. If you stand around, waiting to make the right offer and looking at what you want, a guy like me is just going to come in and offer on everything, and I'm going to scoop it up and I'm going to sell it to you in the parking lot for a 5K fee. So
How many
make
deals
some
do you see
offers.
where people are like, yeah, oh, those margins are too thin? Okay. Did you make
Fine.
an offer?
Yeah.
No. Then how do you know they wouldn't have moved?
Yeah, that's the thing I always say too to people when they're talking about like the price. And it's like, well, they're asking for too much. I'm like, so what? I can go on Craigslist and post a half. Every once in a while, just to humor my students and stuff like that, I'll post a half drank cup of coffee on Kijiji or Craigslist for $1 million. And you
Yeah.
notice no one's stopping me from posting a half drank coffee for $1 million on Craigslist. Does that mean it's what it's worth? Or is
Right.
that just what I delusionally want? And the
Right.
same thing with real estate. Is that what it's worth because it's listed at that price? Not at all. It's about what I'd take. If someone offered me $1 for the half cup of coffee, I might just take it. But what I have it listed for and what I might take are not the same thing.
Gretzky said you miss 100% of the goals that you don't take the shot, right?
Yeah, you miss them all. So if people want to get connected with you, they want to find out more, what should they do? How do they find you?
Yeah, reach out to me. I'm on budevans.com, or you can look me up on Facebook, Bud Evans. We also have the Aim High REI. If you look that up on Facebook, you can reach out to me directly through Messenger.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by, Bud, letting people know. Um, you know, it's not it's not like you told me a story I haven't heard before, but it's
Yeah.
exactly the one that I hear over and over again for people who are loving what they do, have built what they want, and are continuing to build and do what they love. That story that I just heard, uh, well, the military thing shows the discipline side to run 8 businesses, but the real
Bryce,
estate story
when
is
you
crazy.
sit around and you find yourself making more on a Monday than you would make all year as a major, it's time to go.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, and I didn't get
that's the
there by
thing that
accident.
keeps me in real estate, because there's times where you want to quit. You're like,
Yeah.
ah, whatever, XYZ, I want to quit. And then you go and start going through the indeed.com or whatever, and you're like, people do that for that. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll work for myself 40 hours a week and see how that pans out. And if it's, and then magically, when you give yourself the same 40-hour work week as someone who goes to work and you do real estate stuff, suddenly things start happening. But no one wants to give themselves, they think they can do like 20 or 10 hours in real estate and be like, I'm a millionaire now, I'm all set. Well, that's not a job. That's like a part-time job, and you're going to get a part-time result. So
Yeah.
awesome, man. Really appreciate the time. And if you're listening at home, check it out. budevans.com, budevans.com. Thanks for stopping by, bud.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.